the late 1970s, when there was nothing like the indie film scene that we now take for granted, the film Northern Lights surprised the cinema world by winning the coveted Camera d'Or Award at the 1979 Cannes Film Festival. Northern Lights has the feel of an old black and white photograph discovered in an attic. The bittersweet story of young lovers caught up in the political struggle waged by farmers against the grain trade, the banks, and the railroads. Northern Lights brings back a forgotten era of American history and evokes the austere beauty of the Northern Plains. Called the greatest movie you will never see, this rare and remarkable film has been lovingly revived by a team led by IndieCollect for a gorgeous 4K restoration, and is now being brought back to North American art houses by Kino Lorber. In support of this re-release, we're very happy to welcome co-director Rob Nilsson for a discussion about this landmark film. Join us on Inside the Arthouse, starting now.
Hi, my name's Greg Lemley.
And I'm Raphael Sparks.
And welcome to another episode of Inside the Arthouse. Today, we're joined inside the Arthouse by director Rob Nilsson, who's here to talk about the reissue of his film, Northern Lights. Thank you for joining us, Rob.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks from John Hanson as well, and Susan Lynch, and Joe Spano, and unfortunately, Bob Bailing isn't with us anymore, but anyway, good to be here.
Yeah. You made the film in 79, is that right?
Well, we won the Camera d'Or in 79, so we probably started in about 77.
I was reading comments online about how it is the greatest film you'll never see because it's been unavailable. It's being re-released by Kino Lorber, and with this gorgeous 4K print.
And
we should also add that the restoration was supported by
IndieCollect.
IndieCollect.
Sandra Schulberg's organization, yes.
Which does, when you talk about film preservation, immediately sometimes the mind goes to the Library of Congress, and of course it's great that they're doing something, but there's a heavy focus, I guess, on studio films in some cases, and there are a lot of indie films that need some support as well, and restoration is vitally important for these indie films because the companies that produce them may no longer exist, the rights get crowded, and materials
deteriorate.
Can be
kind of, yeah. Well, Sandra is also I think an associate producer on Northern Lights. Did you know that?
I did, yes.
Yeah,
so this is sort of a collective activity that you guys were doing when you made this film? And was it the first film made by the collective?
It was the second one. The first one was Over, Under, Sideways, Down that was directed by Gene Corr. But yeah, Cine Manifest was our organization, and with the mandate to make films about working people in the countryside, in the cities, workers, farmers, the lives of everyday people.
How did you come together as a group?
By word of mouth, and hey, I heard about this guy, maybe he'd be good for it, and another person. John Hanson and I had met 2 or 3 years before in Boston, completely with no knowledge that something like this would happen. I was the least experienced of them all in anything cinema, because I had started off as a poet, then I was a painter, and I had made my first not feature film, but documentary. I was a cab driver in Boston, and I had a camera in the back, and so that's all. They all could work on sets, and they were accomplished, and somehow they took me in as a kind of an itinerant and hopefully promising filmmaker.
But the thing that's incredible about the film is that it feels documentary-like. You have a lot of actors who are, you have three actors total, and then everyone else is essentially, they were farmers.
Non-professional.
Non-professional.
Yeah. Non-professional. Marianne Ostrom Defina was not from there, but she plays the woman that's friendly with Inga. But yes, see, that's the thing. And that's what Cassavetes was about. And that's what the cinema verite, even that was mostly documentary, but you saw that they saw what people are capable of doing. Some of the French New Wave, Italian neorealism with smaller cameras and Nagras and faster film. You can get almost any kind of performance from everyday people, as long as they have the right preparation. And my preparation has always been with workshops, and it's concentration, relaxation, and taking a bit from the method and from Stanislavski, and adding powerful emotion. And I give workshops before I make a film, 8 weeks before we start these exercises, and people learn to be alive and daring and presentational because of high levels of feeling. I took a lot of stuff from Wilhelm Reich and his techniques, also from yoga and karate, and discovered I could do a workshop. How was I going to do a workshop? I invented it.
And you did this with the farmers? I mean, the farmers, the Norwegian farmers?
Because we didn't have, but yes, less so. At that point, I hadn't really evolved all the things that I'm telling you about, but I've done those type of workshops around the world, and for years down at San Francisco Tenderloin, working with homeless people and all comers, local actors, and all of that stuff. I can't say that I did the full flower of the workshop that I involved later, but I saw from working with the people, first of all, it's relaxation. You're not expecting anything, so there's no possibility of failure. And that's the big issue to me with acting as it's normally seen, as you know.
Right.
Editing, if you see it there in a mess of 20 minutes that didn't work, you know it's there when you get back to the
one bit
to the dark room.
There's one shot. I think it's even in your trailer, but it's a shot of when the house gets foreclosed on, or the farm gets foreclosed on, and there's a shot of a couple of farmers, and they are super real. They're the non-actors.
That's right.
But the looks on their faces just killed me and stay with me. There's so much of the film that's haunting, but how did you get that?
Well, it's just the same thing. It's relaxation, and there's no possibility of failure. We don't want you to be anything other, but
there was almost no dialogue in that scene either, so they didn't have to worry about a line reading.
They just had to watch.
Just had to get it from their eyes.
It might be too that you're holding a bit long on those things, and maybe sometimes you'd say, "That's good," but just just relax a little bit. You've been through this. Your family was through this.
People have gone through this. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, trying to make.
Unfortunately, foreclosures did not disappear at the end of the 19th century.
They're about to begin again, I fear.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's like being a good friend or babysitter, where you don't want to threaten people,
right.
But if you expect really powerful stuff, you just tell them.
Yeah.
But in this case, I want you to remember what your grandfather went through and what he was like after he lost his farm. And people do it.
Right.
They don't. It's not 100% deal though, because as we know, you can't do this on a stage. But when you have editing and when you have that time to massage, and then you can do wonders.
Let's set the film for a second, though. So
sure.
Northern Lights is set in the
1915, 16 was the year that the Nonpartisan League took over the state in the elections of 1916. But they had been organizing for several years before that against the banks, the railroads, and the grain trade, and the machinations of big business.
Right. And this is Minnesota.
North Dakota.
North Dakota. Okay, North Dakota, Minnesota.
But what they did fostered revolts, similar revolts in as far west as Montana, and also the farmer labor movement in Minnesota, and the La Follette movement in Wisconsin. So they got, and then later on the Iowa, the farmers' holiday movement. So the prairie populism was mighty powerful.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so the decision to set the film in this period was based on?
Well, it was based on, first of all, John grew up in North Dakota.
Okay.
And secondly, my mother was born in Bismarck, and my grandfather was the first filmmaker in North Dakota. So
that's amazing.
I mean,
it
seemed
natural. Okay,
You're called back. Right?
It was just, first of all, it was John's idea. And then when we got together, it was a natural.
And he had a relative or a family friend who told us, who was a sort of a survivor.
I mean, there's a framing device in the film.
Yes, that's Henry Martinson.
Okay.
Right.
Henry Martinson was a lifelong socialist. He joined the Socialist Party, I think, in 1908. He was the editor of their newspaper out there, the Iconoclast. For about 30 or 40 years, he was the one of the commissioners from the North Dakota Department of Labor and Agriculture. And then he ended up in the labor unions at the end, the Fargo-Moorhead Labor Council. He was the recording secretary up until he was 94 years old. Lifelong socialist, the funniest. He was a poet. He was a humorous, open guy. Hated capitalism, but didn't hate people. And he was the natural. John somehow, I guess when you go to North Dakota, you know about him because he published books there. He had a poetry volume. He was a poet. Huh. And anyone wanted to know about anything about socialism, he went to talk to Henry. And so he threw down with us. And
he starts the narration of the film, and then he comes back, of course. He's a bookend, and it sets a tone of... It just, you feel like you're in the moment that he starts talking.
I've got time. I can wait. Yeah. At the end, he throws his arm. He's doing exercises.
Yes.
94 years old.
Oh, great.
We talked today about social fabric, as a concept, and the idea that whatever people believe or agree or don't agree with, they're still there for each other. And the film really captures that sense of just community and sharing.
Well, there's a good story about that.
So go ahead.
Yeah, please.
There's a good story about that because when we first went up there, we didn't know anybody in that town. But the reason we went there was because they have a threshing bee every July, and they had some wheat that hadn't been
processed,
whatever they do. Yeah, throughout the film, he did the scenes in the winter with the cold and the wind and everything. But we didn't have a threshing scene, but they still had all that old equipment in a Quonset hut there for their July 4th event that they had every year, but we didn't know they'd have the time to do it, and it got colder and colder and colder. And on the last day, John and I got out there on the fields at 4 in the morning, and it seemed to us it was a little bit warmer, and we had a telephone tree, and we called all the farmers and said, "Come on out, we're going to do it.
Do this.
Today's the day."
Yeah, today's the day, and that's the only day we've got.
Come in costume.
Come in costume, absolutely. And we started to thresh the wheat, and suddenly the blizzard came.
Right.
It's terrifyingly cold just to watch it. It's just like, and the fact that you were all standing out there in the middle of it, probably 40 below, I guess.
We had snowmobile suits, and they had the stuff they wore in those days, and we kept on saying, "You all right?" They say, "You guys just do what you're supposed to do."
Yeah,
we're going to do what
we're threshing the wheat here.
We're threshing some wheat here. Yeah, would you not bother us? Yeah.
Wow.
One of the wonderful gifts.
It's an astounding scene.
And at the end, our cameras were freezing up, and the last camera, I mean, we had to blow. We were shooting from the back of a truck, and we were blowing heat on it. And John had one camera left. He was shooting non-sync, and the thing was slowing down, and he was cranking. You could crank him up in those days to keep it up at 24 frames, whatever it was. And the last bit of film, and somehow we got it.
Yeah,
incredible.
I knew there had to be an exit. That's all I could think of, because we knew we were running to the end of our opportunity as well as our capacity. So I said, "You guys, you gotta walk from here to there." So like it's too much for them. And then we had a cook car scene later.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of tension, but it was all beautiful.
But it establishes so beautifully. I mean, because this is before the political conversion, I guess you would say, of the protagonist. And yet it just establishes, I mean, these people do care about each other. Then they understand that it's a community. I mean, they're threshing somebody else's wheat in the middle of a blizzard.
Well, when you have a survival issue and you have a small group, I mean, you're going to get along together or else. I mean, there's no other choice.
Yeah. So it's
In a way, now there's too many choices, and so people can be very, very
laissez-faire, right? Yeah,
laissez-faire and not connected. Yeah,
right. The images of sort of a human against a very large landscape is also so inspiring and sort of overwhelming, and seems inspired also by Bergman. I mean, it feels very Bergmanesque in that sense.
Yes, very much so. John and I were both totally taken with Bergman, and the way we divided up the directing was that John took care primarily of the photography, and I took care of working with people. And that was it. So John has, since that time, published a book of prairie vistas. So he knew where they would be and how to shoot them and all like that. Great. He's got a great eye.
But it's got a great sense of place, too. I mean, I remember there's one scene of a car driving along, and the shadow of the car is positioned in a way that you can tell that the sun is barely above the horizon, even though it's middle of the day, you know. So that this is like the middle of winter, and just the way the shadow comes across, and it's like, anyway. It really roots you in the environment.
Yeah, he and Judy were responsible for that stuff, but I have a pretty good eye too. So it was really we were so much all together with a singular idea that stretched as it needed to and got narrow as it needed to, and working with the farmers. I mean, practical, beautiful, poetic people. Poetic to me in particular because of the argot, the language of another time. Most of them still spoke some Norwegian, even some Swedish. So that was great that we could use that in the film.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Tell me about Judy Aola, the DP, and because this was her second film. I mean, she went on to do some great things, and
she was at was it UCLA or USC?
USC, I think. Right.
Yes, yeah.
Professor there.
Yeah, Judy was a real tough, strong, powerful girl, and in a collective as all the rest of guys, she
stood up for herself.
She stood up for herself. She sure did.
Yeah.
She was Basque. She came from the Basque.
Okay.
So that tells you something.
Yeah, I know it does. She passed away from COVID, I guess.
I guess.
Yeah. The imagery is really astounding. Was all of that sort of found as you went? Was there a lot of sort of pre-production?
We scouted. We knew we had to be in an area. Although we were down, some of the election win scene, that was a little constructed village outside of Fargo, sort of traditional village.
I was going to ask if it was a set or
just using. Well, luckily we had all the old gear and the store interiors and everything. But when we found the wheat, we found the area, so we had to find all of that up in the Divide County area, Crosby, and. Luckily, the people there, the people that we're still in touch with those who are still living. I think the banker's gone, but one of the guys that was in the Saudi scene, big, tall guy, he's leaning against the wall. He's Kenny Sorghum. He's still there. And well, it was a dream. You know, we did 3 documentaries also about Henry Martinson. One using my grandfather's old. Prairie footage, and the other 2 were about Henry Martinson and his. One was called Rebel Earth, where we went back to Crosby to see the sites of his original homestead, and then another one called Survivor, which is about his life as a surviving idealist. Yeah.
Where are those?
That's Prairie Trilogy. That's available through Kino Lorber.
All right.
Yeah,
God bless Kino Lorber.
Yeah, yeah. Well, really? Somebody's got to do it.
And thank goodness that they're doing it. Really.
Yes, I'm very grateful to them. Yeah.
What was the experience of the farmers who were in it when they saw it? Back when?
They were thrilled. They were thrilled. And, and the world premiere was in their little hometown theater.
Yeah.
And I think, was it before Cannes?
I believe it was.
I think it was.
Press notes, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you know that the film was going to be going to Cannes when you had that screen?
I can't remember. I think John would have a better memory of that than I. But the memories you're bringing them.
Do you remember being at Cannes with the film?
I do. I have one memory. which is that we won the Camera d'Or, and now we're in the program where all of the winning films are being announced and the directors and stuff. And now they're shutting down the program, and we weren't in it. We were sitting right there. So I spent the next 4 or 5 days running through Cannes trying to get a hold of John Huston, because he was the head of the jury, I think. And I never could find him. But there was one other Hollywood actor, George Hamilton.
Okay.
He took up the cudgels for us. And in the end, they deigned to mention us. But of course, they didn't shoot us. Man, that really pissed me off.
Huh.
Yeah, I just,
You feel that was because you were unknown?
Well, sure. And because we were just first-time filmmakers. What do they know? And they just
the Camera d'Or is normally given to the first time.
Yeah, well, yeah. Anyway, that's
Politics.
Yeah, not to knock Cannes. It was a great experience. And we didn't have tuxedos, so we went.
Well, that's why they didn't.
Yeah, I found a green sports jacket, and we were standing there on the stage with Coppola and
the indie upstarts. Yes.
Hayseed. Yeah. Well, anyway, a lot of good adventures you get when you don't have money. You have to invent, and you have to somehow make the universe acknowledge you. Yeah. That's what we've always done.
Well, there is something sort of astoundingly sort of handcrafted about the film. It really feels. I mean, everything feels handmade, and it's again part of its authenticity. It's part of what makes it so compelling. There are shots that are just haunting, and that stay in moments, even silent moments between characters that are just so powerful. And here you are. 40 plus years later, and we're still talking about it, obviously. So clearly you did something right, maybe just on instinct and or with pure gumption.
And going to roots that you recognize, going back to our own people and areas. I come from Wisconsin. John came from North Dakota. Going back to things you know from childhood, that can make a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. And you don't know why. You don't know why, because you might just as well become an ice skater and never seen a movie in your life. But maybe in my case, because of my grandfather being a filmmaker, although I never wanted to be a filmmaker, because all of his gear was down in the basement of where I wanted to play with my soldiers and shoot things with BB guns and everything. And anyway, it all seems like homecoming. Even now, it feels so great that we can be discussing this, and you guys and I from different places sharing ideas about it.
How did Kino find this, or how did they find you? I mean, they've obviously. What was that moment where they said, "I know we need to reissue this," because it obviously recognizes that it's a treasure and that it needs to have the attention.
You mean you're talking about Kino?
Yeah, Kino's sort of decision.
Well, yeah. So Richard and I first met him when I won for Heat and Sunlight at Sundance, and he was there, and then he distributed Heat and Sunlight for a while, and he always wanted Northern Lights, and so
so it was a favorite of his.
Yes, it was. He always and we were dealing with other things that didn't pan out, but we decided to go with him for Northern Lights, and he's terrific, and George Smoltz and other people there, terrific people. So we feel fortunate.
When IndieCollect had already gotten on board with doing the restoration,
yeah,
we knew it was happening. So there was going to be some good elements.
It was all happening around the same time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, John was able to raise some money for that, and also he was he oversaw it and stuff. I think it turned out pretty damn good.
Oh, it looks beautiful.
It's stunning.
Yeah,
it's stunning. It's definitely a film you want to see in a theater. I want to say. I mean, I had to watch a screener, but it's a film that I would encourage people to see in a theater because it's so
beautifully composed.
I hope I'll be able to come down when you open it. Well, I plan to be here actually.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, George wanted to make sure that I would be coming down for that. So
Right. The plan now currently is to open in New York on May 23rd.
yes,
And that's going to be at the Film Society of Lincoln Center,
right.
which is beautiful. Okay. And we're looking at some June dates, I think, here in Los
You
Angeles.
may be the next ones up. I'm not sure.
We'll see. Yeah. And Kino Lorber should have information on their website about other theaters where it's going to be opening. I mean, there's restoration is or reissues are big right now, and so I think that it's part of a moment and part of a movement, and I think it would be important for people to see it, and it echoes maybe, the elements of the film. I mean, you're talking about making this film, I guess, in a period coming out of a period of political activism in the 60s in America and 70s, but recognizing that they're the roots of that movement or antecedents of it,
Yeah.
My grandmother used to like to say there's nothing new under the sun. So every time any generation, comes around and thinks that we've invented political activism or no, just
Yeah.
look and see what your grandparents did, because they were probably a lot cooler than you were.
Right. And as I told you before, I've got a new website, Rob Nilsson Art Forms, and all the films, all the paintings, all the books. So all of that's coming up on Rob Nilsson Art Forms. It'll be opening up on May 1st. The Old Workers' Day, back in the 19th century. So I guess now we have September 5th as our Labor Day, but this May 1st is the working man's Labor Day.
Yeah, right, around the world, right.
Yeah, around the world.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely, it is. It is. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, this is one of your first films, and you've gone on to make 45.
Yeah.
And they've been recognized and awarded, and lots of festivals. There's something about this film, obviously, that feels so just so authentic and just captured something. And film, it feels so, tactile film. The way it's shot, the 16 millimeter, and the faces.
Yeah, small crew, everybody having to do everything. I think we brought 4 or 5 people from San Francisco, and the rest were helpers from the area. So all the people that are not in the film, too, that helped us. And Marianne Ostrom Defina, for example, went out early. It wasn't too hard to find the farmers' costumes, because pretty much they were the same,
they just showed up when they woke up that day.
But she organized it, and she got all the stuff together and became lifetime friends with so many people up there.
When you look back at it now, do you have some sense of perspective of what the spark was that you captured, or what you
or what you inspired?
Yeah, what you inspired
from the success of the film.
I mean, we're operating with 2 major organs. One's a heart, another one's a mind. Mind has all the imagination and the creation and the wild surmises of life, and the heart beats. They're trying to be linked into that. I mean, you see with your eyes, and what do you see, and how does it grab you? If it doesn't originate here, I don't think it's going to originate out there. Of course, everybody's different, and art is different for each person. I'm not trying to say anything about art, because it's only good if you love it. But somehow this one seemed to be catch more people, and yet not in the larger Hollywood framework of beautiful people and kind of set piece ideas and entertainment.
Well, I'm thinking if George Hamilton's a fan, I mean, he's a beautiful guy.
You can't get more pretty than.
But he saw something in the.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
George Hamilton was our hero.
Mr. I've got a tan. Yes, right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But no. Well, I want people to understand. I mean, as much as that there are politics in the film. It has a point of view about the world, but it's also but it recognizes that we're also people, and that we have love and aspiration, and so it's not just that. I guess it is.
Exactly.
It's an amazing mix of both those things.
I think that if politics doesn't have heart, then we're looking at the fascistic possibilities. You look
Either side, really.
Well, sure. That's right. That's right. And it's hard to do when you're trying to relate in that way to such a big number of people. How can you have empathy for millions of people? Well, you know, it can't be individualized. It has to be a broader sense of species love, or kind of a sense of when you were a child, your parents helped you to grow and to become something larger, and maybe it's that wider instinct, or that instinct widened out, that can have some relevance, like Walt Whitman tries to show this kind of broad sense of the overall life of people and places, and poets, I think, are probably some of our best exponents of that idea.
Mm-hmm.
What was it for the actors? I mean, I know Joe Spano because I've worked with him, and he's just
have you?
He's a very young Joe Spano.
Precinct elsewhere. Hill Street. Sorry,
he's a great guy, and I also. But is it John Baring, the lead?
Bob Bailing.
Bob Bailing, sorry.
Bob Bailing, yeah.
Just their experience of how they interacted with the farmers. Wonder what that process was, and how that.
Well, first of all, when we arrived, it was at night, and the farmers were sitting in a little museum they have, farming museum, and we walked in, and they're looking at us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Looking at these guys, yeah, okay. And so obviously we had to, be ourselves, because that's what they were being. They didn't know.
You can't win them over.
No, not at all.
Try.
And Bob is like them. Bob is natural, and so is Joe.
Yeah.
I mean, when we were doing the IndieCollect thing with Sandra Schulberg recently at your theater, Joe is just, just a guy. Just talking to people, doesn't think he's anything special. But that's what makes him special, because he just has this, I'm okay, you're okay. Probably not the right casting of it, but an empathy. They felt that from our people, I think, because how could we not like them? They were just so simple and cordial, and we lived in their houses, and we drank with them, and we ate with them, and we sang with them. Henry would read poetry to groups sitting in the farmhouse. This was later on, I think, when we were doing it was actually earlier when we were doing the documentaries with Henry. But in urban life, we don't necessarily know that so much, because there's so many different kinds of people. What do you guys feel about that? I mean, you're living in Seattle, and you're in New York.
I live in New York, yeah.
So how do you feel about that kind of human solidarity, where you are and how you relate to the area?
Well, they're more diverse communities. At its best, we feel our strength through that diversity, and that we can look. I mean, I'm in Seattle now, but I come from Los Angeles, and the ability to say, yeah, I'm going to celebrate this neighborhood and this particular culture here in LA. I'm not part of that, but it's part of my community, so I do get to celebrate with them. But it's certainly different from being in a more homogenous society where there's a certain strength from all coming from a similar background.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean, the neighborhood where I live in Seattle is historically a very Scandinavian community.
Oh,
I'm in Ballard.
Oh, yeah, sure. We played up there. I know all about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the film better screen at the Norwegian, the Nordic Museum for this reissue. I want to look again. I think we're all people, and if we can find that common humanity, whether we live in diverse communities or homogenous communities, that's really what we should be searching for.
Yeah.
Is the strength. I don't think diversity necessarily breaks us up or makes us any less.
I'm of the mind too that, and a lot of my more recent films deal more with the darker side of human nature. I think it's essential, because even in a small community, if somebody goes off, they go off big. And now you have to but that dark side is always there, and not all of us are all peaches and cream and friendly. Part of that is the salt of life that poets and artists are there to help us live through. That the dark and the light, you find one through the other, and it's not a good society where we're all it's all what light and goodness. No, it can't be, because you have life and death, you have sickness, you have people going off this way and going off that way. All these things have to be, I think, recognized. And I say that because I feel that a lot of Hollywood media wants either to go bad guys, good guys, or hey, I'm okay, you're okay. And I don't see it that way. I see it much more like a contradictory. The contradictions of human nature are as much what makes us real and human as your idea of empathy and care.
Yeah.
And I think cinema helps us see that. And in a way, it's a catharsis, too. You can get rid of some of those dark things. You go to the cinema and you see some stuff, and you say, yeah, I feel that way, too, but I've never been able to admit it. So I've used that idea quite a bit in my later works.
You know, look, the fact that these people all know each other and come from a similar background doesn't stop the banker from foreclosing on the house.
But Ray, we get no pleasure from foreclosure. Remember that?
Right. In his fur coat, right? Yeah.
In his fur coat, yeah. We used to laugh with him about that. He had the capacity. He foreclosed on a lot of people, but yeah, Gary Hamish. I don't think he's with us anymore, but he was willing. He said, "I know what you're doing to me." I said, "But I'm willing to. I'll go there.
I'll play that.
I'll play that."
Well, he knows it.
Yeah.
Whether he did it himself.
The fact that he was willing to do it is fantastic.
Yeah.
Play himself. And
that's what I mean about, accepting light and dark and working your way through it, because it's a dynamic that we're doing whether we want to or not. Tragedy is one of the great forms of literature and cinema, and to exist within it and to accept it, I think it's a big job somehow. But we should be aware that this whole idea of catharsis is, goes back to Shakespeare and before.
Indeed. I mean, the story that you tell is there's a large super story, which is obviously the emergence of this kind of gathering, this unionization, as it were, and an idea that carries. But within that, then you tell this story of the families and the individuals and how people are impacted and how relationships are pushed apart, and so it feels both large in the sense of kind of change and progress, but it also then feels very intimate with the people. And you were able to clearly you were able to hold both of those things. Clearly that was part of what you were thinking, is figure out a way to tell a small story and a big story at the same time.
Absolutely. It just, I don't know, I can't express how important I think that is. And you find that once you work in the type of workshops that I do, you start to feel it. You don't have to identify it necessarily. You just start to live it. Because the opportunities of going joy, rage, despair, intimate connection go the whole way, and you start to feel the extremes in order to know the subtleties of the connections later on.
Well, I mean, this is a film. I had not seen it. I wasn't aware of it. I was told that we had the privilege of being able to talk to you, and I watched it and was just knocked out. And I, as someone who's discovered it, as it were, this is the joy of what I get to do sitting here. But it's really a must-see film, and for anyone who hasn't seen it as well.
Right, really... they're the reissues of the films that you've heard of.
Right,
and oh great, now I have a chance. And but there are also reissues of films you may not have heard of, and many of them are as worthy of reissue and reconsideration and reviewing. And certainly for you, this was one of the latter ones.
Yeah, it was a wow moment, and I the expressiveness of wow, but it knocked me out, and so exciting to kind of come to it and then hear your process of making it, because it was a spirited making of it, and that translates into the film for sure.
Yeah.
So glad to hear you say that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to coming down and seeing it with you guys.
Here in
the theater. All right.
In June, right?
Yep, yeah. In June. That's correct. So the film is Northern Lights. It's going to be returning to North American movie theaters starting May 23rd, to Film Society of Lincoln Center. So look for that. Coming to Laemmle Theaters in June. And we'll update our website with that information. You can get all this information at Kino Lorber eventually. including eventually,
Yep.
I guess, a really great DVD set with
Yeah,
with
which
lots of
we're in.
extras, which would
now,
be terrific.
now you'll
with
be
the-
able to find it. It'll be the masterpiece that you can find. Yes.
But the film is co-directed by John Hansen, and our guest here today, Rob Nilsson. Rob, thank you so much for joining
Thanks a lot, you
Yeah,
guys.
Rob,
Inside
great
the
to
Arthouse.
talk to
Really
you. Thanks
great.
for
Really
sharing.
appreciate it. And great that you'll be traveling around the country, or at least certainly to New York and LA for those screenings, hopefully in
For
the Bay
sure.
Area as well. So,
And I'll be seeing you then.
all right.
Okay.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, please like, please subscribe, and certainly please share with those people. We want people to see this film, Northern Lights, when it's reissued in North American movie theaters. Thank you for joining us on Inside the Arthouse.
See you next time.
Our show was produced by Raphael Sparge with on-site producer Norrin Dickerson. Supervising producers are Thomas Cassetta and Miles McCreary. Our show was edited by Gabriel Emley and sound mixed by Thomas Cassetta. Our musical theme was composed by Isabel Engman and Gerardo Garcia Jr. Marketing by Gabriel Emley. Show graphics by Jenna DeAngelis. Additional marketing and web design by Stephanie Peters. Filmed at the historic Laemmle Royal Theater in Los Angeles, California. See you next time on Inside the Arthouse. If you like today's show, please consider subscribing to our channel to learn more on Inside the Arthouse.